Nigeria earned a total of $2.4 billion from non-oil exports in 2014. That's according to the Nigeria Export Promotion Council. The Nigerian Agribusiness Group is one of many groups seeking a higher contribution of agriculture to the country's GDP. Earlier, I spoke to Sani Dangote, the chairman of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group, and Emmanuel Ijewe, the chairman of Best Foods, to discuss the state of agribusiness in Africa's largest economy. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for coming in today. Very interesting topic. It's been a big discussion point, even from the last administration. And I think it's a good opportunity to just look back and just count the gains. So I'd really like to start with you, Sani. Your thoughts about how far we've come. The last administration was focused on an agri-transformation agenda. We've seen some moves made, but overall, what are your impressions of how far we've come?
Well, you know, obviously it's true. From the last administration, we had the former Minister of Agriculture driving the ATA, which is Agri-Transformation Agenda. There were some very good points which the government was putting through. One of them was the zones which they wanted to create, which is the stable crop processing zones, and also the push for rice, and also the push for cassava, and also large-scale farming. And these were a very good initiative, and I think the minister did everything possible. But unfortunately, there were some counter measures from other ministries which were not going aligning with the Ministry of Agric, where they were issuing a lot of other import excesses for rice, so which was counterproductive, allowing different physical policies to come in between those policies. So really, it did not have the impact we expected, and we wanted the government to focus all the energies from different ministries to the same vision of the ATA. Right. But unfortunately, very minimal gain. What I could say additional I was able to achieve was the fertilizer subsidy removal and direct farmers credit for the subsidy. Apart from that, most of the issues were not really concluded. Right. But they are a very good initiative. Right.
Emmanuel, you're a practitioner here, and you've even taken it a step further. So your business is in the processing aspect of agriculture. Your thoughts about the last 4 years? How far have we come?
I think, like Chairman Sani said, we've made the right move in the right direction. We would have done a lot more, but for these issues that he raised. But we've gone very far, and a good foundation has been laid. And one interesting thing that I have found over this period is the fact that, I hate to use the word, but agriculture has become more sexy. Younger people are going into it. People are seeing it as an alternative source of a real serious career.
Right.
That is an achievement that has been made. Right. Now it's now left for us to now build on that.
Right, absolutely. We need to build on that, and I think you make a very interesting point, because up to now everyone wants to work in banking, in the oil and gas sector, but now agriculture appears to be an alternative that people are looking at. But of course, a lot has to be done. And I want to just get your thoughts about the growth internally, because like I mentioned in the intro there, we have seen non-oil exports increase, and agriculture has played to some extent a role there. But internally, your thoughts about how the industry is constructed, the building blocks that have been put in place, your thoughts about what we have on the ground right now?
What we have on the ground has been one of the constraints. We've not been able to see in the past, seen agriculture as a holistic part of the economy. In other words, the mentality should be from seed to table, and therefore the value chain is important. One aspect of that is as important as the other aspect. The transporter or the person involved in logistics is as important as the person who is growing the food. The person who is selling is just as important. So all of them need to be brought together, the banking industry and so on. So what has happened in the past was that they were compartmentalized. But now things are beginning to change. Thank God for that. And that's one of the main reasons why I'm glad that the chairman of Nigeria Agribusiness Group, Sani Dangote, is here, because that is the main purpose of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group. And all of us who are practitioners and so on are beginning to see a very bright light in the future.
Let's talk about the Nigeria Agribusiness Group, and if you can just help us appreciate the vision of this organization and the contribution it is making to the advancements of agriculture in this country?
Well, Nigerian Agribusiness Group was formed in last about a year and a half to 2 years, I could say. Myself being the chairman, initial chairman, and Mr. Jewelry as the coordinator. Now, the vision actually is, we have seen, like what Jewelry said, the understanding, the concept in the minds of people was agriculture, just farming. And that stopped there, but actually should be from farm to the table.
Yeah.
And all the supply chain there included. And we looked at all these issues, and we are in the agribusiness, decided that it's time to come together and put one body, one association that will now encapsulate all areas of agribusiness, regardless of whether you are a small or large or medium-sized farmer, or you are a processor, or you are a consultant, or in a financial institution, or you are in R&D, or institutions to do with agriculture. Any aspect of your business can come together under an agribusiness group, and so that we can now see all the synergies, we can see all the benefits, we can see all our challenges, we can see all the issues, and discuss with them, and be able to have one front that we can engage other private sector or government, local, federal, or state, and could be a center where for all data and all information you can come in and you can get all the information you need to, and you can get as much information about individual companies, about the nation as a whole.
Right.
And this association also will affiliate with other associations in other countries of similar nature, so that we can compare their own gains and issues, and we can see how we can put together how Nigeria can benefit as agriculture as a business. It's no more just as a farming.
Yeah.
We can look at challenges with small farmer holdings, we can look at challenges with large scale or medium, we can look at processing, and then be able to see how we can come up with a solution, not only depending on the government, but we can assist government to come up with the right policies that can drive the agribusiness as a whole.
Right.
This was the vision.
It definitely sounds like a great idea, but over the last 2 or so years that it's been formed, what will you say have been the major achievements?
Well, you see, the major achievement is that we engaged the last administration in this idea about staple crop process zone, which we made some input into it and also cautioned them on certain steps.
Right.
Which definitely, if they had concluded without taking such input, it would have been a disaster. As a normal government just come up with policy without consulting stakeholders.
Right.
The other issue is that putting together this group has not been easy. You can understand there are so many other associations, they've been existing for decades and so on. All of a sudden somebody come up with an association that says, let's all put together our efforts into one channel. So getting all members to come in to do several meetings to draft our constitution, the bylaws and rules, regulation and so on, takes time. And also visiting other countries like Kenya, where we have got some association with them or affiliation with them, to understand how do they structure their agribusiness, how can we put up some model here. So there's been a lot of meetings, several meetings engaging with the government, with federal government, with a few state governments, and a lot of the private sectors, banks, insurance, processing companies, agricultural farms and so on, to synergize and sell the concept to them and be able to bring them on board. So I think in about a year plus we've done extremely well being able to put all this in together, and where we're planning now to have more national meetings. So.
All right. Well, let me hear from you. We're in an era now when everybody is asking the government to do one thing or the other for their industry. So your thoughts about what you would like to see the government do for agribusiness? A lot of important building blocks have been put in place. This staple crops processing zone sounds like a great idea. We've seen how the government has intervened in the distribution of fertilizer. So quite a few interesting things have happened over the last 4 years. But going forward though, as we continue to wait for the government to set policy direction for this economy, what are your expectations?
Well, my expectations are that the gains that we have had in the past should be consolidated.
Right.
Of course, there are a bit of fine-tuning here and there, but by and large, those fundamental principles, that the private sector should be the engine of growth in the agricultural sector, and that government should not come up with any major policy direction without consulting with the stakeholder, that is the private sector. Because the private sector are actually the players. I mean, The federal government does not own land where they plant anything. State governments too are discouraged from getting involved. Local governments all these are supposed to create the enabling environment for their people.
Right.
And the other thing that we want brought on board will be the understanding that agriculture is practiced in local government levels. In many states of the Federation, local governments don't really exist.
So this is an opportunity to really vitalize local government.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's where it starts. That's where all the farmers are there. That's where it starts. That's where you sell your seeds. That's where the local markets take place. That's where transportation comes from. Even Lagos, which is the biggest market in Nigeria, the biggest market in Lagos, Mile 12, is in the local government. You know, the local government should be very much involved, and the state government should encourage them to do this. We believe that that's a good direction. And on top of that, there should be a seamless relationship between the private sector and the public sector. Right. A lot of it has been achieved, and from the last government, that means, in fact, there was every time we were holding a meeting, the minister sent a representative who reported back to him. Right. And whatever views they have, they shared with us. Even the new ideas that are coming, they shared with us. And we want this government to continue with that kind of situation.
Right, right. Of course, we'll get more into those details. But let me just get your thoughts very quickly, Sani, on this new policy of the central bank. 41 items have been restricted in terms of FX for imports of those items, including rice and several other agricultural products. Your thoughts about the timing of this? It sounds like a good idea to stimulate the local market, but your thoughts on this?
Well, I can say it was a good move in the sense that most of the product actually can be produced locally. And I think in any economy, some hard decision must be taken. It may not test well because it came suddenly without any notice. And that's the surprising factor, really, that the industry is not happy with. That we should have had enough notice, and we can put our house together. But knowing very much the Nigerian system, if such notice were given, definitely the economy will go into another shock before it can come back to some normalcy. Yeah. But what I see is that government should come with some way, or central bank should come with some way of providing a certain relief for certain commitments that have been made to the extent that these companies do not go under immediately. Right. So as to be able to find a means of giving a certain window. For example, for oil palm, there are companies who are doing backward integration, and we've got policies in line with the like sugar, like cement, and others that are paid well, whereby you could be saying, if you are doing backward integration, we can allow you a certain window, but with a certain guarantee that you will perform while we check your backward integration to allow that growth in the industry. Same with tomato. We know that we can grow tomato in 4 months, rice in 4 months. Why do we have to go and spend our money? All we have to do is bring in certain policies that will encourage backward integration, so that it's not just the policy without supporting the backward integration for those companies that want to continue doing the business, but certain things are not right to be able to go back to the backward integration. For the same with maybe plywood and some other things, there should be some way that they can encourage a backward integration, so that people or companies that want to really go back to continue with their business have such opportunity to say, okay, the window is closed for export, for foreign exchange, but if we're serious about going backwards to do a backward integration, we have this opportunity, some kind of incentive which government or CBN can put forward. Say, if you're willing to go back, we can support you so that you can create the local capacity.
Still on our discussion on the state of agribusiness in Nigeria, Sani Dangote, the chairman of the Nigeria Agribusiness Group, and Emmanuel Ijewere, the chairman, Best Foods, they join me, and we talked about the type of support needed for the government to drive agriculture. Before the break, we were talking about policy, central bank policy in this case, but I want to broaden that a little bit, and just your thoughts about the type of support that is required from the government to really drive agriculture forward. We've seen what the central bank has done. Some would suggest that it's tough times call for tough measures because of the scarcity of foreign exchange, but it's still an opportunity for us to really focus on agriculture. And my question to you, I'll throw this to you now, Emmanuel. What more can make this work? Because there have been some doubts that yes, the central bank is providing some support, but a lot more needs to be done.
Now, you corrected the situation by saying that tough situations call for tough measures.
Yeah.
What's happened here can be seen as a one-off, but it should not become a policy of government of coming and surprising the private sector.
Right.
Private sector cannot stand surprises. They plan well ahead.
Right.
And agriculture is a long-term sector of the economy. It should be planned as a consistent policy, because when people hear what government policy is, they react to it economically by investing in that policy. But if you intend to change that policy, take into consideration the level of investment that have gone into it and the people who were involved and what are the consequences. Like you said, this right, what's happened is happened. But for the future, there should be this interaction, a seamless relationship.
Right.
The old mentality of us and them, government and the private sector, must come to an end. It's out of date. The private sector and the public sector all are working for the good of Nigeria. If every company in Nigeria is rich, Nigeria as a nation is rich.
Right.
If we all make profits, Nigeria makes a profit. So that mentality needs to be changed. That's the kind of thing that government itself, that means that every department of government must come in and believe that the Nigeria's economy needs to grow.
Right.
I'll give a simple example. You bring in stuff, food stuff from Gombe, for example, coming to Lagos, and they say one of the backlights is not working. For that, they hold that vehicle, contain about 1 million naira worth of foodstuff. It perishes there. It does not get to the market it's supposed to get to. The product, the commodity that vehicle is carrying, is Nigeria's wealth. That policeman needs to understand that the food in there is for Nigerians. It did not commit any offense. You can arrest that policeman, but allow that food to be delivered where it's supposed to be delivered, because it's Nigeria's wealth. When it perishes, Nigeria's wealth is lost. That kind of mentality needs to go through the entire system in Nigeria.
But coming back to the conversation around support, I mean, we've seen, for instance, over the last 4 years, FAFIN being created as, some kind of finance support through venture capital for players in the industry. Do you think that is another thing that we need to really grow in terms of the level of financial support, or are you in the camp that say, all you have to do is set policy direction, finance will come?
I don't think so. I think what they're doing is the right one, the FAFIN and so on, because all the commercial banks in Nigeria rely on deposits. Deposits are usually short term. Unless we're able to structure a long-term source of financing, agriculture can never have the light of day. So it's important that the FAFIN one that you mentioned and many other ones that are coming up, new ideas and innovations are coming up, those should be encouraged as much as possible. And also the pension funds too should also be moved in that direction, because they're long-term fundings. So it's important that as a policy, every effort be made to increase the basket of funds available for agriculture, because that's the future of Nigeria. That is the one that provides jobs, more reliable jobs. That's the one that creates a situation of self-employment. A lot more.
Let me get your thoughts on this issue around funding. We've just talked about FAFIN. Seems to be a good idea. What other innovations do you think need to come to the fore now? Agriculture Bank, for instance. Do we need specialized financing for agriculture?
Well, obviously, you know that in any country in the world where agriculture is playing a prominent role in the economy, is also getting prominent attention from the financial sector. You cannot build an agri-based economy with 9% interest, 7% interest, 5 years fund, or 6. You need a longer period, minimum 10 years and above, more especially for a large-scale farming, and also for the microfinance for the small farm holders. You need a policy whereby you create these small-scale farmers into cooperatives, where they can get the benefit of improved settling, fertilizer, equipment, equipment leasing. Currently, some banks like Bank of Agri is organizing some a tractor leasing, but it's not the leasing in really per se. The cost is high, and also the few companies that are not really in the business of agriculture are setting up this company to provide the service. So where from one farm needs a particular implements or tractors are different from another farm, and most of the tractors being brought in at 35, 60, maximum 75 horsepower, which cannot do the large-scale farming, and cannot also do a certain work even in the small-scale farm holders, because sometimes you need to go deeper to the core of the soil to break certain barrier so that the drainage system of the soil will work perfectly well. Right. Some small tractors that they import of 30 to 60, 70 cannot do that such work. Right. So you need to also encourage tractor assembly plants to come in instead of these luxury cars assembly plants, or at least also encourage tractors, agricultural equipment, to finance them well so that they can also have the capacity to go in through long leasing for farmers. You need to create a long-term fund whereby bankers or agribank can be able to lend at a very low single rate, maybe 2%, 3%. You need to have a good agri-insurance scheme that you can be able to insure all across the value chain of agriculture. You need to be able to have the research institutes and agricultural colleges to fund them well for their research and development, because agriculture has moved to a bit more technical now. Right. So without such, it's going to be a challenge really to get this. So that policy on financing is critical, and I think the central bank needs to look at how can they provide a much longer funding at a much lower rate, and be able to also have certain seminar where all the financial institutions can come together to understand the real need of agricultural sector.
Right. I want to come back to this conversation around import substitution, and I want to get your thoughts, because I know you are a processor. So do you think we're at the stage where we need to do a lot more of that? Putting in clear policies, you may not call it a ban, but definitely driving local production of more agricultural products. From your experience, do you think we're at that point where we need to be a lot more aggressive? And of course the benefit will be to the local economy. Well,
certainly we need to be a lot more aggressive. We have a lot of structural disadvantages compared to imported similar products, because in many of those countries they have subsidies of one kind or the other, and the whole idea that maybe World WTO says, oh, open your windows, open your doors, no way. We need to look at Nigeria's own interest. What's our own interest? Because we have that disadvantage. We have the disadvantage in terms of power, in terms of roads, in terms of water, and so on and so forth. These are disadvantages. When government recognizes this, they now find a way of reducing and ameliorating the problems that those who are producers and processors and farmers go through.
But then are there any particular products or crops that you think that we're in a place where we need to do that aggressively around? We've seen what the central bank is doing around rice.
Yes.
Of course, we need to hear from the government in terms of its policy on that. But are there any products that you think are like low-hanging fruits where we really need to focus?
Oh, certainly. I mean, rice, you mentioned rice, but you have cassava, tomato. I mean, it's disgraceful that about over 98% of our tomato puree, which our wives use to cook, are imported, when we are one of the biggest producers of tomato in the world. So that is a challenge. Those are low-hanging fruits. But you now also have a number of things that are beginning to take shape. Even in the fruit industry, we need to develop our oranges, our pineapple, which are said to be one of the best in the world. We ended up bringing in raw materials made from pineapple, when we're in fact producing some of the best pineapples in the world. So the policy should go towards that direction. That's why I said it's so important that government policy must be in sync with the private sector intentions and abilities, but encourage them to get there. There should be this kind of relationship. The policies, we say, I'm not looking at a situation where government sits down in its office in Abuja, makes a policy and imposes on the private sector. No, sit down with the private sector. What is good for Nigeria? All of us are in the same boat. All
right, I'll give you the final word. I have less than a minute here, but I do know that your annual general meeting is coming up, and what are the big issues on the agenda for the Nigerian Agribusiness Group? I think everyone is looking to you now to drive the private sector voice in the industry.
Well, Our AGM is coming on Thursday, the 13th, and I think it's good that it's coming at this very crucial time. And the really benefit we see is bringing all the complete agribusiness group bodies into one, and be able to now fuse our energy into one, be able now to directly engage all other stakeholders into discussions, and be able to bring out our issues and challenges from small to medium and large scale players and all across the chain. Issues like what we've discussed today will be issues that we can discuss within ourselves, with all the associations, members, and then be able to find a common ground, because bankers will be there, insurance will be there, research institution will be there, government representation will be there, private sector processors, farmers, small, medium, and all. Everybody will be, logistics and media, everybody. So we will table all issues, all challenges, and be able to now have a one common ground to say, this is the policy, this is the right attitude, this is what we're looking forward to encourage agro-business in the country and drive agriculture as a more forefront in the economy. And once we do that, I think we will now have established one single unit body where government can now interact with and find what's the field of the private sector. As we said, private sector should be the main driving force in this sector.
That's it on Beyond Markets. Thank you very much for joining.